So what I do with my kids, I mean, I 100% believe it all starts with me. Like I have to be that person, because more than whatever I say, they're going to look at me and say, how do I react to people? How do I treat people? What am I trying to do? Like, what kind of father am I being? What kind of husband am I being? It's a challenge for me because I have my job, I have my side gig, I have, father, husband, spouse, like trying to figure out balancing all of those things and trying to show them that I'm a hard worker, but also showing them that I want to spend time with them, and be there, showing them that I can be creative and be an entrepreneur, but, that they're more important than any of these jobs that I have.
Welcome to Authentic Conversations. I'm your host, Ryan James Miller, and I believe the way to freedom, fulfillment, and success ultimately comes by living as the most authentic version of yourself. If you're ready to live the life you've dreamed of, you're in the right place.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Authentic Conversations. So what you are getting today and what you will have seen at this point is a bit of a shift in how I've shared the last few episodes of the podcast. Not that the format's changing at all, but definitely the types of conversations I'm having, while I want to continue to be very real and very raw, very authentic about people and their lives. Many of the episodes were turning into, and again, not that they were bad because people have been giving positive feedback and we've been learning from them, but they were just turning into these 7 steps to being a better or 7 steps to overcoming. And again, those are important things, but I just wanted to do something different. And I wanted to align with this passion that I have to speak more specifically about manhood today. A word even that triggers a lot of people, a topic that is being challenged from every facet of this world. And so I wanted to go right at it like I always do. And so because of that, took to LinkedIn, started asking some people if they'd be interested in coming on the podcast. And one of the people that raised his hand was somebody that I've come to respect very, very highly. That's Steve Watson. He's the founder of Trendbreakers. You can learn more about him by going to LinkedIn. I'll make sure to pop his link in the show notes so you can reach out to him. But, he's created this community of finance people, human resources professionals, and benefits advisors, and really trying to help them get a grasp on just the out of control healthcare costs that we're experiencing in America today. And I say we because we're all there. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the fact that Steve is a man. If you're looking at him, you can see it already.
I'm right here.
He's there. He is a husband. He's a father to a lot of kids, which we're going to dig into. And so with that, Steve, what up, buddy? Welcome. Glad to have you.
I'm excited. It's fun. Like I love geeking out on employee benefits, but I mean, you get into my family. That's my passion, really. I mean, that's the passion that we all have. It's most important to us that we don't talk enough about. So I'm excited about this.
Okay, so we're just going to get right into. So family, you have a lot of kids, right? How many?
I have 7 kids.
Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
What are their age ranges?
So my oldest will be turning 17 here next week. And the genders, it goes boy, 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 girl. So I got a little girl at the very end. So it's 17 all the way down to 3. So she's just turned 3 here past December. So 6 boys and a little girl ranging from 17 to 3.
That 3-year-old child will be protected for the rest of her life.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Yes. And she's as girly girl as you can ever get. Every princess dress, every princess, but she'll take your knees out because she's got 6 older brothers. Like she doesn't mess around.
I love that. Okay. So 7 kids. How long have you been married?
We just did our 19th year anniversary, celebrated in Charleston. So
if I had some really cool sound effects, we'd all be cheering right now.
Yeah.
Because that's amazing, right? I mean, it really, really is. When we think about just the sanctity of marriage, at least when I think about the sanctity of marriage, when we talk about marriage in general, we just don't hear people that have been married that long, right? I mean, it's getting harder and harder to hear people.
Well, it's funny when you first get married, you hear those people have been married like 20 years, like, wow, that's like so long, or 10 plus years. And yeah, it'll be 20 years next year. And it just keeps getting better. Like, and honestly, good times, bad times, all this stuff. But I don't think people realize that the longer you've been married, the more depth that it has and the more your relationship has and stuff like that. And people, I think, miss out on, spending that much time with one person.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting for me is, and, I could see you as somebody that would probably feel very similarly, so I just celebrated 20 years of marriage to my wife, and which is just a feat in and of itself for her, definitely more so. But at this point in my life, and I'm only 43 and I have a lot of great guy friends, but there is nobody that I would rather spend time with than my wife. I enjoy guys' night out or guys' weekends every once in a great while. But when I'm gone, I just miss my wife and want to get back to hanging out with her.
No, it's so true. And I think this is a difference between men and women. Like my wife definitely needs her girlfriend, needs a break from the kids running around and go off and do stuff. And my kids are like, well, who are your friends? And I'm like, Mom, that like, well, why don't you go off and do it? Like, if I'm going to go leave on a weekend and go somewhere, like I want to go with my wife. I want to go spend a weekend with my wife. I want to go wherever, and spend time with her because I'm the same way. Like that's my best friend. That's who I want to be with. That's why we got married, right? Spend lifetime, eternity with.
And so 19 years means that it's been all bliss, right? To get to this point.
Yeah. With 7 kids, all bliss.
So tell me about that just for a minute. What's it like to be married that long? Like, I mean, obviously it's not all easy. We have, different challenges that we run into on a daily, yearly basis. And so what's it like for you to think back on the last 19 years of marriage and getting to this point?
Yeah, I mean, we joke around like we never could have imagined this life. I mean, I think when you first get married, when you first come out of college and stuff, you think you're dreaming big, but it's really small in what life has planned for you. I never thought I'd go to Brazil. I lived 5 years in Brazil with my wife, and we had 2 of our kids were born in Brazil, and never thought we'd move to Arizona, and never thought we'd have 7 kids. That was never part of the plan as well. And it's just now I'm in my early 40s as well. And like looking forward, I still think I'm dreaming big, but it'll be fun to see what the next 20 years bring. And I would just say, talking about authentic kind of stuff. I mean, this thing about having 7 kids, that was one of our biggest challenges in our life. We're very strong in our faith as well, and a lot of prayer and a lot of stuff. And my wife had dreams of having a girl. But our very first one was born, and we had the name picked out, Emily. We thought it was a girl, stuff like that. I have this boy. And then, had a couple other boys, and we're both from big families. I'm the oldest of 6. My wife's the oldest of 5. And we always thought like 4 or 5 kids. That's where we thought we would have. And then, the 3rd boy comes, and then the 4th boy comes. And, I mean, we're part of the LDS faith. I mean, we're starting to max out like the Catholics and the Mormons is our joke. We're having more kids than them. It's like the 5th boy comes, and so she's still having these dreams about having this girl and having, and it wasn't that people would ask, like, are you just waiting for the girl? It wasn't so much about that. It was more like we felt God had called us to like have this girl. And so like you're questioning your faith of like, do we keep going? This is what God wants us to do or not? And so then we have the 5th boy and then the 6th boy, and you're like, holy moly, that's just a lot of kids. Like, I mean, I love all my kids, but I'm just saying that we were just, and then, have the 7th one, and it's a little girl, and this princess, I can't imagine life without having my little girl at the end, but it's hard. I mean, this is a hard life to have that many kids, and it's hard to have a 17-year-old and a 3-year-old at the same time, because the 17-year-old wants to stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning, and the 3-year-old wants to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And, it's just dealing with teenagers and little kids and stuff like that. I mean, blast, I wouldn't change it, but it's hard. It really is a hard thing to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, were there any significant hurdles that you guys have faced in your marriage along the way? I mean, was there any big moments of challenge or struggle that you recall as being just one of those things that almost stumped you up?
My wife and I've always had like a really good relationship between the 2 of us. And so I don't think we've luckily not had like a big challenge between the 2 of us. It's again, a big part of our faith is that when we get married for eternity. And so we really believe that these marriages go beyond just this life. And which is a big deal. And so when you're talking about getting married, it's not even like getting married for just like the next 40, 50 years. You're talking about like ever kind of stuff. And so part of it going into that with that mentality, I think helps live through like the small things and the big things. But as far as like big hurdles, I mean, moving to Brazil was a big challenge, like living in a different country and a different culture and dealing with that. I think the biggest ones was like, do we have more kids? And, do we follow this kind of stuff and challenging? Because my fourth child, when my wife was pregnant with our fourth, she ended up in the hospital going with an ambulance there. And I remember following in the car this ambulance and just like, that's my whole world. It's in that ambulance right there. And just, being the dad and the father being like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. I can't do life without her. I can't do life. And so I don't know, that was tough. But
yeah. So I guess that kind of leads into my thought. So, as I think about being a man today, there is this, at least I feel, a significant tension. So we not too long ago came out of this era of toxic masculinity, right, where, guys were overflexing themselves. And with that, we saw like, the height of, maybe abuse kind of, came to the forefront in society. And then we saw this pendulum kind of swing almost into a complete other direction. And this isn't always going to make more fans of or for me, but then we started to swing into this very weak sense of masculinity. The answer to toxic masculinity was,
well, it's a joke, right? You watch any movie about dads, it's all about the funny guy that can't do anything, that doesn't know how to do anything, and it's just like it's a joke.
Yeah, or they're they don't need to be strong, they're just passive. And so how do you view, and especially, I mean, you have 7 boys. So like, how do you personally view masculinity and leadership as a man in your home and with your boys? Like, how do you come to see that today?
Yeah. And I remember like on your post, like one of the things you talk about being kind of like white, conservative male, kind of stuff. Like you can't even like really say that anymore, right? You can't even like say that until you get hammered. And okay. So it's like one thing about me, like I can deal with my own stuff, but I have 6 boys that I'm trying to raise that guess what? They can't choose their race. They can't choose their gender. They can't choose their conservative stuff. And I'm trying to help them feel valued. And I think that's, as human beings, that's what we all want. And unfortunately, I think that's what's happened to a lot of minorities, a lot of female, a lot of stuff. They just weren't valued for so long. And I think as society, we're doing better at doing that. We want to bring everybody up to feel valued, but I think we're pushing men down and saying, well, you can't feel valued, you can't do that stuff. That's not what we want, right? And so sometimes when I go out there and say, I want to feel valued, I want to feel like I'm doing this stuff, I want my boys to feel that stuff, I can't say that now. Unfortunately, on social media, I can't go out there and do that in a very public way because I just get slammed out there. And you think about clubs in high school, like you can't have a male club, you can't have a conservative club, you can't have a heterosexual club, you can't have, put those 3 together and you're like deemed this racist kind of whatever out there, but they need a place, and I want to teach them. And
how do you educate them? I mean, especially like your older boys. I mean, 17, that's a junior man. And so, how are you bringing him up to find that in himself? And at the same time, I would just expect this of you, knowing what I know of you, to be respectful of those that think differently.
Yeah. And I am that way. And it's funny. And you're the same exact way. And I saw some people like hammering you. I'm like, do you even know him? I'm like, for the love, like, because we just see a post and then we go off on people. And it's like when you know people. So what I do with my kids, I mean, I 100% believe it all starts with me. Like I have to be that person, because more than whatever I say, they're going to look at me and say, how do I react to people? How do I treat people? What am I trying to do? Like, what kind of father am I being? What kind of husband am I being? It's a challenge for me because I have my job, I have my side gig, I have, father, husband, spouse, like trying to figure out balancing all those things and trying to show them that I'm a hard worker, but also showing them that I want to spend time with them, and be there, showing them that I can be creative and be an entrepreneur, but that they're more important than any of these jobs that I have. And so as much as I can, I just try and share their struggles with them and say, look, it's hard. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. And what do you guys think? And trying to listen to them and and I'm not perfect at all. I mean, this is, this is a journey that I'm trying to grow. And I learned my one son, got into a conversation with my wife and was saying, look, I just want to spend more time with dad. Like, I just need dad. Mm-hmm. And that hurt, this 14-year-old that's having a hard time and I want to do this. So we came together and decided we're going to go play pickleball. So we wake up at 5:30 in the morning because he loves pickleball and we go play pickleball every morning. And I'm not in the shape to play pickleball. I'd rather sleep in and do stuff, but it's what he loves to do. And it's turning into be like our thing. So every morning we go play pickleball. And
you know what I love about that so much, Steve, is so when I think about a man, a couple of the defining characteristics are protector and provider. Oh. And I think the old school idea of provision was in some sense monetary, right? I'm going to put a roof over your head. I'm going to put food in your mouth. I'm going to, clothes on your back, which are all very wise things to want to provide for your family. But one thing that I started to become really fascinated by was this idea that to provide is also to make available. And I think that's one aspect, particularly that men and fathers in homes, or even husbands to their wives, have often overlooked. There was a season of my life when I was spending so much time trying to provide the practical for my family that I was ignoring my family. Yeah. And so I love that you're making yourself available in a way that is so much about provision. It's wonderful to hear that.
Some really good books. There's a book called Love and Respect. I love that book. I mean, if you haven't read that book, between like learning between males and females and stuff like that, and it comes from a Bible scripture where it talk about how it commands women to love their husbands and for women or men to love their wives and wives to respect their husbands. And he was just fascinated. Like, why is the difference? Like, why shouldn't it just be love each other and do stuff? And so diving into that piece and how we speak different stuff, and you'll have to go read that book and do it. But it's helped me with my wife, but it's helped me with my boys as well. And my wife's gotten to the point of saying, look, these like 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, like, I can love them, but I can't teach them respect. I can't teach them to be a man. I can't teach them these kind of stuff. Like, it's your turn now, Dad. Like, it's on you. And I'm feeling that way now. It's like the older they get, the more that's like, when they're really young, mom's like there all the time and keeping them alive and stuff. Well, like, now it's my turn. Like, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, no, that's good. So so for you, your own kind of personal, in your head moments and times. So what does tapping into your own emotions look like? Because again, I feel like that's another area that it's definitely rarely talked about unless it's talked about in attachment to anger. But so how do you handle emotion for yourself? And then again, obviously that's translating into, how you're parenting kids.
Yeah. And it's actually been something I've been thinking a lot about over the last probably year and a half. And there's a really good book out there called like No More Mr. Nice Guy or the Nice Guy Syndrome or something. And I really fall into this where I just sacrifice everything for everybody else, right? It's all about waking up early, money, time, energy, kind of like this martyr complex. And what I've found is that, while it's service is such a good thing to like give, you got to make sure that you're actually giving it and not turning it into like this martyr thing of like, I'm going to give it to you. And I wish that I had that time, and kind of this resentment behind it as well. And so like tapping into your own emotions is like, what is important to me? Like, what do I want to do? And finding that passion within myself and then pairing that with what my kids want to do. Like I'm actually starting to really enjoy pickleball. It's actually turning into like a little passion of mine and something that's fun for me that I want to go do as well. I don't know. Emotions is tough because I've actually been a pretty even keel person most of my life. And so I don't get super passionate, super sad and super stuff like that. But as I feel like I missed out on part of my life too, because I'm not feeling some of those, even the good ones, like extreme happiness and extreme joy and extreme stuff.
And was that similar in your own upbringing? Like, were you brought up to just be very even keel, or was it too?
So that's one of the things I was kind of reading through that. So I was the oldest of 6 kids. My dad had 2 jobs. He had like his day job and he had a farm. So I grew up on a sheep farm as well. So he was gone all the time. And so it was like mom with me and 5 younger siblings. And it was just pretty stressed there. And so I never wanted to add more stress to my family. And so I'd always like kind of be very independent, take care of my own stuff, never like put my challenges onto my family because I didn't want to add more to it.
Mm.
But, we learn a lot of our bad habits from kids and how we were taught and how we were raised and stuff. And I feel like I miss out on a little bit of life because I'm not willing to kind of open up myself and kind of talk about those things. It's always about the other person because I'm in my head trying to serve them. But then they're like, well, what about you? Like, how can I help you? How can I get connected with you? And so I'm learning that now in my 40s of trying to open up more. And it's, I've taught myself for 40 years how to do it this way. So some of the things I don't even know the answers to.
So interesting that you say that. My parents divorced when I was 6. And on one hand, I had to step up and be the man of the house right away. Like my mom was remarried a few times. And some guys were good for moments. Other guys were never good at all. And so I was consistently, the kid. I was mowing the lawn. I was driving, my mom got breast cancer when I was young. And at 14, I was driving my mom around because we didn't have anybody else to do that. And, I kind of stepped into that role. And so I became independent. And then when you coupled my personality, which was very boisterously outgoing, everyone was like, you're the leader. And so I never learned how to accept any of that. And then as I grew up, one of the other things I realized was that my dad had very high expectations of me. And so like him leaving coupled with that expectation really pushed me to then want to always prove everybody that I could do everything, right? I was enough. I was worthy enough. And so those things coming together created this monster of sorts, which, I never wanted help from anybody. I was way too prideful. And I mean, that was just internally destroying to me and brought me to the literal, just like brink of disaster because I was just, it was too much about me and I couldn't let anybody into that. Like that's a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, and then you talk about, going back to where we started out with like marriage and love and stuff like that. Can you truly give all if you're not giving all, right? Or like, it's like I can serve and help as much as I can, but if I'm not willing to let them serve and let them help me and let them feel my emotions, let that stuff like that, like it's like I'm almost doing a disservice to them of not letting them all the way into me. So
that's really good. Yeah. I mean, when I've done quite a bit of marriage counseling for other people in the past, young couples that are getting married. And I always tell them, one of the lies you're told is that marriage is 50-50. I said, marriage is 100-100. If you are not going 100% all into everything on a day in and day out basis, you're always going to come up short, and you still are anyway, but you're always going to come up short in some degree or another. I mean, it's really about giving all of yourself over to another person, and people just don't get that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, 2 other things that I'm kind of interested in hearing from you as we slowly begin to wind down. So the first one is, fear. So again, you are a husband to your wife. You are a father to 7 kids. You are involved in multiple business ventures. Like there has to be some fear built into all that you're doing. So as you think about all of your life out there, like what is that fear that you feel like you're most challenged to deal with? Or do you have one that you're most challenged to deal with?
I don't know how much of the surface it is, but providing for my family is a big one. I mean, I got to put food on the table. Like we eat a lot of food, and we we spend a lot of stuff. I have a college coming up and stuff like that, and so the idea of having some company have the ability to fire me, it just does not resonate well with me at all. That I could just, and so that's partly why I've always had these side things, and I like multiple streams and stuff from a providing protection for my family's source of income has been a big thing for me. I don't want to have somebody have that type of control over me. And so if one thing goes, that I'll be able to have other sources. Other fears, I think we talked about my one son just recently, but them not knowing how much I love them and how much I care for them. So I'm like balancing trying to provide as much for them, but I don't want to miss these years with them at the same time. Like I don't want them to come 10 years from now and be like, wow, wish we would have spent some more time together or done something. So it's like those two balancing is probably what I'm most worried about.
Okay. That's phenomenal that you said that, because I mean, that really is the final question that I wanted to ask. So practically, how are you balancing the desire to love, sacrifice, care for, and serve your family while continuing to maintain some level of success, whatever that is to you? So what are some of the practical steps that you take to do that, or do you have them?
The one that I always try and do that I'm still have a lot to learn about is go all in when you're doing whatever. So we're doing a podcast right now. It's like be all in on the podcast and not worried about some of the other things that are there. And when I'm playing pickleball with my son, go all in at that moment or go on stuff like that. So that's been helpful. And it makes a little bit more meaningful relationships when I'm with them and doing that stuff. So I'm not just half on the phone and half on this and half brain over there and whatever. So you just, even if your body's there, you're still missing out on that. And then trying to get really efficient and know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And so I'm really good at like hiring people on my side hustles to do specific things that's not what, editing a podcast is not what I should be doing with my life. Right. I mean, it's just, but I really enjoy doing the conversations, enjoying the conversations. And so spend my time doing that and let other people do other things. And it's easy to kind of get caught up with like, well, how much money it is, and I could save this money and stuff like that. But there's the time aspect of just do what you do really well at, go all in on it, and let other people that do those things do them for you. So
I dig that. I love that idea of being 100% all into what you're doing. I mean, I know it's something that I fall victim to a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, and you have far more responsibility, but I think too, then really backing that up with knowing what you're good at, what you enjoy, and offloading the things that either you're not good at or don't want to do. And I think that's very practical. I want to say simple wisdom, though it's a very difficult thing to do. It's very, very practical, simple wisdom if more of us would adopt it, because it would free us up to do more of the things that we like to do, which is going to allow us to be more present with the people that we love, more present to do the things that we enjoy, and more present to be more successful in the businesses that we're all either invested
like
into
all
or
aspects.
running.
It's like home life. What can I offload to other people to do? Even if my day job, like saying like, this is what I do really well with, we need to hire somebody else to do that, or my side hustles, stuff like that. Like it's got to be all aspects of your life of like trying to do what you do well and let other people do it.
That's good. Well, that's the good one big practical takeaway. I said I didn't want 7 steps, but one was a really good one. All right, man. Well, I mean, I appreciate you being willing to share. You're actually the first one. I don't know where this is going to come out in publishing, but this is the first episode that we're recording in this vein. So I'm interested to hear how your experience and feedback is going to lean into, what many other guys are going to share, but super valuable and super helpful. So thank you for being willing to go first.
Very, very welcome. Unfortunately, it can be very lonely being this dad and this husband. And I think we just need each other and to be able to like talk with each other and do stuff. So I really appreciate, to come on and share my story and look forward to other ones.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up another episode of the podcast. As always, make sure to reach out to and connect with the guest, Steve Watson. You can find him on LinkedIn. I'll put his link in the show notes so you can do that. If you have any feedback for me, thoughts, questions, concerns, heck, if you were pissed off about something that I said, reach out to me. If you were mad about something that Steve said,
you can reach out to me too. It's fine.
just put it all on me. I'll take it all on. Other than that, as I always say, regardless of what I'm talking about, be you, be happy, be authentic. Peace.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Authentic Conversations. If you are ready to live the life you've dreamed of, I'm here to help. Head to ryanjamesmiller.com/podcast to begin your journey. And if this episode impacted you in any way, pay it forward by sharing it with someone you know. I'm Ryan James Miller, and I'll see you next time on Authentic Conversations.